it on this. Hey, Jenny. Thank you so much for meeting with me. So Jenny is a mind-body coach focusing on chronic fatigue syndrome. Yes, and you're in America,
Yes.
you're in the States, you're in Wisconsin, but working online and spreading the good word. So, yeah, is there anything you want to add to that to introduce yourself?
Oh gosh. I mean, prior to that, I was always in the space of well-being. I was a fitness coach for a long time and then transitioned into the mental health therapy space when I went back to school to be a counselor. And then shortly after is when I went through my chronic fatigue. So then I sort of just brought all of that knowledge together and combined it with what I was learning through that chronic fatigue journey. So there was like a whole history of well-being before that, but just practicing it from a different perspective.
I love that. I actually have a similar path, but there's nothing greater you can really give to someone than your own experience of having gone through. I actually walked through those steps of having mystery syndrome, I like to call them,
Oh,
and
yes.
being on that journey of seeking and searching and being dismissed and x-rays and tests or whatever. There's that
Yeah.
whole space. For someone, it's such a gift to be able to do that. So thank you for doing that for the world.
Yes.
So yeah, so when did your chronic fatigue, when did it come in? When did it happen for you?
Yeah, that was back in 2015. I had started to experience some weird things like vertigo, felt really dizzy. It started to really freak me out. So I went, there was one day that I was so dizzy. I'm like, I shouldn't drive home from work, but I'm going to do that. And I'm going to go right to the hospital because I thought something was really wrong. And, they did all the scans and the images then for my brain and everything was fine. But I was so debilitated just from the vertigo. So I ended up already kind of staying home, taking a couple days off work. And that went on for about a month, I would say. And then that got a little bit better. I was working with a physical therapist. I was already doing some mind body practices. I was interested in meditation at the time and had started to work on my stress levels. But then this really strange thing happened where I was getting ready to actually take a hike alone and I was in my bedroom and I had this kink in my neck. I was like, oh, this is so weird. I'm going to stretch it, right? Your kind of natural response. And I stretched my neck and I just collapsed to my floor. And I was never the same again. I just had this cold, clammy feeling. My heart just felt like it was barely beating. And I was home alone and of course terrified because I didn't know what was going on and I just didn't have any strength to like get my body off the floor. And I was calling my husband and my mom and all these people, nobody's answering their phone. And I remember calling like a distant cousin, that I knew in town, and she brought me over to the ER and they're like, everything's fine, everything looks good, right? And of course, then that ended up being like a year-long journey of testing all the things, from your heart to your endocrine system to your brain. It was like, something's really wrong here. That was the moment. It could have probably just been me pinching a nerve and collapsing, but my brain just took it and ran with it as something's really wrong. I'm in a lot of danger. And so it became sort of a complex PTSD kind of experience, right? Where when we know fear is a big fueler in this whole process, I mean, it was like somebody just poured gasoline on my fire and ignited the whole thing. So I spent a full year hunting for medical answers. And then someone introduced me to the book by Dr. Sarno, The Mind Body Prescription. And I read that puppy in like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. I just devoured it. Everything in the book just felt like they were talking about me, the perfectionism, the wanting to be a good person, the sensitivities to emotions, right? And I was like shoveling snow by the end of that book. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And of course, it did just happen overnight. And I'm sure your journey is similar. 7 years later, I'm working full time. I'm running. I can mountain bike. I can play soccer. I take care of my family and I'm working and running my business. So there's a lot happening now that just I never would have thought was possible. So just kind of a quick and dirty, snapshot of how that went. But of course, there's a lot of like bathroom floor moments in those 7 years where you're just done, you want to give up and you don't know where to go, right? And that was what I felt, was just so lost. Nothing was working. There were no answers, and you just sort of get left alone to figure it out by yourself. And I think that's what really drives me today is like people should not have to be alone in this. This is a very scary and isolating and invisible journey. Like, how are we going to step up and help now, given our recovery? Um, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And I completely, yeah, I resonate with that. It's such a lonely journey, and it is
Mhm.
really scary. And going to doctors and getting
Yeah.
inconsistent, like, information being dismissed, or getting inconsistent
Yes.
information. One doctor would tell me to go on this drug, another doctor would tell me to go on another
Oh,
drug, another, I got my
yes.
whole body scanned, all these different things, and everyone would say something different, but nothing was helpful.
Yes.
And a lot of it was very scary.
Yes. And
So
crazy making, right? When you're trying to digest everybody's conflicting information, you're like, oh God. It's so, yeah, confusing and crazy making.
definitely. And then you feel crazy.
Yeah.
I also like, so I had a really alternative, I always have had an alternative like upbringing and alternative people in my life. Alternative,
Awesome.
yeah, which is really cool. But it also that also didn't help. So there, even though I had to go, I
Yes.
always had the conventional and the unconventional. I studied
Mhm.
holistic therapy. I had all these different angles. But for me, when I really hit
Yeah.
my worst and my most rock bottom, I was like, I honestly felt like I knew more than and had
Mhm.
access to more
Yeah.
schools of thought and different kinds of
Yeah.
healing modalities that I either studied and practiced. And
Mm.
so I really felt so alone and so misunderstood by the world and so dismissed
Yes.
and so hopeless and helpless. It was some really dark times. So I really share that vision
Yes.
of like just like getting this word out there that of all these different things that can actually help with these types of syndromes and afflictions and pains and disabilities.
Mhm. Oh, you captured it so well. The hopelessness, the despair, the isolation and feelings of loneliness. And yeah, I mean, there's just no darker place in my mind. I'm like, wow, that really was the rock bottom. That's the hardest feeling experience to go through, at least from my perspective.
Same. And
Yeah.
people like
Mm.
I know other people share this experience, but everyone wants to help. They just want you to feel better
Yes, they do.
and
They care, right?
there. And so everyone
Yeah.
would make suggestions like, well, have you tried? And you're just like, I want to, like,
Stop.
I know,
Yeah, I
right?
think my first doctor prescribed Ritalin, and I was so desperate in the moment, but I still had enough bearings to be like, what are you talking about? Like, and he kept saying, oh, well, that will give you a boost of energy. And I mean, this, the way your body feels when you're that debilitated, you don't just need a boost of energy. I mean, your brain feels confused. There's tension all over your body, right? There's anxiety and palpitations that come along with it. I had digestive issues that were sort of slowing down, and your body just feels like there's no life in it. It just felt like every ounce of my life energy was just somehow drained out. Like I just didn't know how to access that again. And prior to that, feeling so alive and so well and vibrant, to go from that to this thing that it was unrecognizable, for me. And I think for a lot of people when you get into that. So a lot of strange things, yes, given to me along the way. And I don't know how you felt, but I always had this like, there's going to be this one thing that's going to make me better. And I was kind of on this, I didn't know it at the time, but I felt so desperate, right? That I would try things and that was going to be the thing. And then it wouldn't work, or it'd work for like a week and then I would feel crappy again. And I realized like I had that hidden agenda to desperately change and fix my body. And there's a special kind of acceptance you need to get to, right, around really truly allowing your body to be as it is and learning how to relate to those symptoms with empathy, understanding, and compassion. That was like half the journey for me because I so desperately, wanted to, I kept saying, get back to who I was, get back to who I was. And I would just live in that echo chamber, which was suffering, it wasn't working, it wasn't helping. But at the time, you just don't know anything different. You're just so desperate to change.
That's so true. I can relate as well. I was on a massive mission, and people kept
Yeah.
saying to me, like, this is incurable. You're not going to get better.
Oh,
Like all these different things. And like, I do think that my passion and intensity and defiance really just like
yes.
it kept me going until and I
Mm,
kept trying the same old stuff, go back to
mm,
the herbs, go back to the supplement, go back to this, and go back to the
mm.
doctor, go back to medication. I just kept trying everything and new and old. And
Yes.
it did, that energy, that intense energy did bring me to, when I found the mind body teaching, I just went all in. But then
Yes.
there is a moment where, my whole passion and intensity was to get out of pain, to get away from all the symptoms.
Oh, sure. Yes.
People say, I get clients come to me and they're like, so do you never get pain now? Like, all you want
Yeah.
is not, and you're like, well, it's not exactly what,
Not totally like that. I talk with my clients a lot about like normal fatigue, right? Because there's this debilitating, like just drains you fatigue. And then there's this like, well, I went mountain biking and camped all weekend. Yeah, I should feel tired, right? Like in the right context, it's so normal and right to be tired. And like I have really had to learn to differentiate between those two things because I would start taking on more as I recovered, but then I would get tired, which I should get tired, and I would mistaken that for, oh no, I'm backtracking. And it was like, no, 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 hold on, let's differentiate here. This is how I should feel. This is normal, right? And just basically reducing the fear response, right? Is what I was doing there. That panic that we feel when pain or fatigue or the migraine or whatever symptom someone's dealing with, we have that initial panic. And that's what I really had to, yes, work to soothe that because any little symptom would just trigger that, oh no, what's wrong with me? Something's really wrong. And
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
That fear response is so legit because
Oh, it
those symptoms
is.
in the past did take you down. Like for me, I'm sure for you, it's like so you get a bit of tiredness or a bit of pain,
Oh,
and you're like, oh my God, it's like, what's gonna happen? Like those times were so scary.
yes.
Like the fear is legit. Like so it's like
Oh,
the
yeah.
journey that you described so well of like retraining your brain into not freaking out
Yes.
when some pain or fatigue or whatever does arrive.
Or even that anger, right? I would get so angry at my body. I would get so frustrated and I'd be like, my body betrayed me, my body's broken. So it might be fear for one person, but some people are more apt to get angry at their selves or their bodies. And that was a whole nother rabbit hole I would go down. Or then the despair. I'll never heal. It's not possible. I'll be this way forever. And this real victim despair rabbit hole. So I kind of had to start to label, right? Like, what tunnel did I just go down? Was it fear? Was it anger? Or was it this victim hopelessness? And those three for me were the most common. I'm sure there's other flavors out there for each person, but those were my tunnels and rabbit holes that I had to get very aware of when that was coming up.
I love that. I'm trying to think of any other tunnels, but I definitely had those: the despair, the victim, why me? It feels so
Oh,
unfair.
yes.
It's not like this for everyone else. When I was at my really, really rock bottom, it was like my late 20s,
Yeah.
early 30s, and all my friends were either still going to parties and festivals or
Oh,
getting married and having
yes.
babies and buying
Mm,
houses, and I was like slipping further and further away from
yes.
existence. I was going on disability benefits.
Mm,
It's really dark. So oh yeah, why I was saying that is because that despair, that why me, this is so unfair. Look
oh,
at everyone else having the time of their lives, living their lives. Why me? That unfair story was really, really strong for me.
For sure.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, and the littlest things can trip it, right? I'd see a woman out running and I'd be like like, almost mad at her. I hope she realizes how lucky she is, right? And, like, I mean, you just get taken over with
Oh,
the
for
most
real.
intense thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, what a time of your life to see so much blossoming and so many things that missing out experience, right? The
That's an
grief in that. There's so much grief in that.
yeah, loads of grief, and it
Mm,
was just this huge missing out. Definitely this feeling
mhm,
of missing
mm,
out for sure. And yeah, getting really
mm.
angry, like how dare one of my
Ah,
friends text me and tell me their good news, or like that they're going
yes.
on holidays, like just this anger and resentment, which was fueling it all, more anger,
Yes.
more resentment.
Ah,
But I didn't know, I didn't know.
no, we just don't, right? We just don't know another way at first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, I can really relate to that tunnel and the anger and frustration, that really perfectionist, like just no
Mm.
self-compassion at all. Really
Yes.
hard on myself, hard on my body, hard on my symptoms, thinking that I should just have energy all the time, just really disconnected to and insensitive to my own,
Yeah.
to myself. So just thinking,
Oh, insensitive, such a good word for it. Yeah, I too, very minimal self-compassion. Kindness, that was just, it was harsh. It was push through. It was go harder, right? It was overcome and be tough and all of that. And, I believe in a time and place for grit, but it can't be the only tool in our toolbox, right? Is where I was at. It was like I didn't know anything else. And yeah, this idea of being kinder to myself felt wrong, like I would fail. Your mind just instantly swoops in to protect you from these other options as if they're going to hurt you, and you kind of have to take kindness in doses for yourself, experiment little by little so you can learn that being kinder to yourself is actually okay to do, right? Like it's mind-blowing that would feel scary to our brain, but again, what's unfamiliar is unsafe, right? And it's just how it is. So until we learn otherwise, compassion, right? I'm sure in hindsight, we can both look back and go, oh, like that poor version of ourselves, like just was trying so hard, but didn't have the tools. And I always think of that with clients, there's such the term meet your client where they're at is so relevant here, right? To truly go, yes, I get that place. I know that you're not ready for some kindness. I know pushing through feels so much, makes more sense to your brain, but let's really start to open our minds, and that open-mindedness, that curiosity, I guess, to explore something different. Like, okay, what else is here for me, in this journey? When you can find somebody in that place, that like 1 degree of openness, right? It's like, okay, we can work some magic here because it's just so easy to stay stuck without a guide. Even with a guide, it's hard to break free from those habitual patterns. Yeah.
totally. My auntie was
Mm.
reading a poem the other day, and there was a sentence in the poem that described the seduction of safety.
Oh, yes.
And it is like,
Mm.
so I went when I was at rock bottom and I was like suicidal and really, really in a bad place.
Mhm.
And I went to this center that gave like free therapy for suicide prevention. And
Mm.
I just started telling this woman, this therapist, like everything that was going on. And I I thought I was just speaking normally. And this
Yes.
woman was in shock. Like I shocked her with how
Wow.
mean I was to myself. She
Wow.
was shocked. She was a therapist, and
Wow.
so I'll never forget that. But that's all I knew, and
Mhm.
that was a safe place. It's the
Yes.
seduction of safety. And so I love how
Mm.
you described
Ooh.
the curiosity. So like
Oh,
that's something that I always have had, is I always have been so curious. I want to know. I'm
yeah.
interested to know what else is there, and you can just edge your way in. But
Yes.
uncertainty is always scary. And to the
Yes.
subconscious and like our brains are there to protect us. They want to keep us safe. So in that safe
Yes, they
place,
do.
yeah, in that safe place of pain and suffering and being hard on ourselves. So yeah, just getting curious. I love that, little bits of
Mm.
kindness.
Yeah, your natural curiosity, it sounds like, is a lot what I've experienced too, is just that want to understand more and just leaning into that a little bit at a time. But to parallel that with your relationship to uncertainty is key, because curiosity can turn into desperation, right? If we have to get an answer. But if we can have curiosity coupled with this idea that it's okay that I don't know all the answers, I'm finding my way slowly, and that's how this journey is meant to go, right? It's like, okay, then you can really kind of lean into things slowly, softly, with more ease, you know? It's funny because a lot of people will ask me, like, oh, did you do any supplements for fatigue? How else did you support your body? And I did for a short bit, but I had to pull off of all of that. And it wasn't because any of it, quote, didn't work, or, there was anything inherently wrong with that. I was just approaching it from that same desperate energy. And there was something in me that knew that I had to pull back and get my internal relationship with myself and this journey right before I could really truly receive the benefits of other modalities too. Mind body is at the core of what I do, but I always say it's kind of like a mosaic. Once you take care of this internal landscape, then you can discern and have so much more wisdom, right? To select these other things that may very well still continue to support your body. But if we're just grasping and reaching and, right, just so desperately wanting to get out of that condition, it just ends up being more fuel on the fire, you know?
It does.
Um,
And I love that
yeah,
so much because I'm the same. I love my potions. I love my little witchy
totally.
things and like whatever you feel drawn to. I believe everyone has their own
Yeah.
path and their own
Oh,
intuition. But what I was sharing in a workshop yesterday, the one thing I wasn't doing, I was doing all these different things and supplements and diets and everything outside of
mm,
myself. But the one thing I wasn't doing, I wasn't changing this
yes,
internal world. So
yes.
it's not from the outside in, it's from the inside out. And at the
Oh,
core, like you shared, it is the conditioning, the beliefs,
yeah.
the pattern. It's just actually, I love to say, a coach told me this once, it's just a bunch of bad habits. It's like,
Right?
it's actually that simple. It's a bunch of bad habits.
Yeah.
You don't change those bad habits and patterns and beliefs, and no matter what you do, if you, well, your organic, your
Mhm.
food or whatever you're giving yourself from a loving place, it's yeah, it's not really scratching the surface. For me, I got sicker and sicker, like you said, because it fueled. I was like
Yes.
so desperate for each diet and
Mm,
each juice fast, and I
right.
did. Someone was saying this to me the other day. They're like, oh, I did this juice fast and I got this result. And like some things you can get a really powerful placebo effect from. And when I quit
Mhm,
gluten, I did feel better. And when I did do these things, when I reorganized
mhm.
my space, I did get some results, but because I didn't cut it at the root, because I wasn't working with the internal space, something else would pop up. So like,
Oh, totally.
don't they call it the
The
symptom?
symptom imperative, right? Oh, we know that game, right? Yeah, so what bubbled up for you after that?
True. Well, actually, when I first found the My Body teaching, just like you, I devoured the books. In about 2 weeks, I healed my IBS of 30 years. I had all these foods I couldn't eat. I hadn't eaten gluten or sugar in like 6 years. I walked to the shop. I bought loads of sweets. I could eat whatever I want. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I was free.
Yeah, right.
Miracle. But then what happened is I did go on to experience the most intense anxiety I ever thought possible, because then it was out, right? Then it was like out of my stomach, and it's like, and now it's gone somewhere else. It was like moving around.
I had the same response. Anxiety and panic were one of the first things that came up for me. And yes, to the point where you're like, I didn't realize that this could be a panic attack. I didn't realize that this could be the experience of anxiety, right? Whether that's the palpitations, or I would it felt like my whole body was just contracting. Um, you just, and the fear, the level of fear that comes with panic, you feel like you are about to die at any moment, right? And it's just so terrifying. So yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Constipation was a big one that came in. Then I started to get some hormonal headaches. Then my period would be all over the place. Menstruation cycles were just and oh, you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole if you're not doing that internal work, right? Then it becomes, oh, I gotta fix that. Oh, I gotta fix that. Oh, I gotta fix that. No, 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 no. Like what you do with this internal work truly can soothe and ease all of it from the same right perspective. But I did not see it that way at the time. It felt overwhelming that more and more things then were coming in, right? And you feel like, I think the other thing is the expectation that I should never have fatigue again, or I should never have constipation or anxiety or any of those things. And it's like, oh yeah, I live in a human body. And when my human body gets a little stressed out, these are the things that come up to catch my awareness, right? So those questions from clients about, so now you never, right, deal with XYZ. No, I totally can hit patches of fatigue, but I haven't missed work in years. It doesn't really stop me actually from living my life anymore. There's like a ton of other reasons, right, why I can move through that fatigue with so much more ease and a much, much less panic, right, than I ever would have in the past. And if it does visit, there's a way through. I have that confidence to know, oh, this is a temporary little blip. It's not going to be this way forever. Where when I would initially relapse a couple times, those first couple relapses were like, oh, it's back and it's going to be here for another, 10 years and who knows? And you just feel the fury kick in. Now it's kind of like, oh yeah, okay, let's reflect on the week, right? What's been going on? Normalize this, right? Invite in your kindness. Of course, you know this, but yeah, it's
It's a game
we're
changer.
imperfect, right? We're
Yeah.
imperfect. We're designed to be imperfect. It's okay. But I really gripped onto that image of perfect health.
Yeah. I love
Mm.
what you shared because it's like, right, so in the past it was like Googling and going off in a million different
Oh,
directions, going to appointments here, there, and everywhere. But now it's
yes.
like the narrative, like you literally, if like anything arises in your body or whatever, you're like, right, I know if I do A, B, C, I'm gonna get to one, two, three. Like you have a roadmap and you have all the tools.
Yes.
Like you have your little toolbox that you know what works. So that immediately
Yeah.
frees you from all the pain and suffering around
Totally.
it, in fact. And then also it frees you from like all the money and time and energy that you spend
Oh, yes.
going around everywhere, like getting
Mm.
the crazy making that you talked about before.
Mm.
So it's such a gift. Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Such a gift. But I loved what you were sharing about the whack-a-mole as well with the symptom imperative. And I often think back on because in my early 20s I used to party loads and drink and take drugs and
Oh, yes.
yeah, like hardcore out all the time. Like and so when I got to like 24, I decided I'm gonna get healthy. I'm gonna
Yeah.
sort my life out and get my shit together. So I quit smoking, I quit drinking, I quit taking drugs, and I expected to feel amazing and to like I was like making this big dramatic healthy choice. But what actually
Yes.
happened was the opposite. And
Mm.
I got sicker. So because the
Mm.
beliefs that were causing me to drink so much and party so much were not changed. So that had to go somewhere, and I got so depressed, like chronically seriously
Mm.
depressed, and aches and pains in my body. Fatigue came out as fibromyalgia, and I would meet people, and I fell out with all my friends, and I lost my like just the social. I stopped having fun. Actually,
Yes.
I stopped having fun because I
Oh,
was like, I was this hard on myself perfectionist.
yes. The
Decided,
discipline just like took over, right?
oh,
Yeah.
I like became a military sergeant on myself. So mean, yeah. And I had gone from like
Oh,
rolling around in fields dressed as pixie with glitter all over my face to being like you're gonna sort your shit out and stop drinking, stop partying, and go to school and like sort your life out. And I was so mean to myself. I just like meaned myself into, but the beliefs and everything that was underneath the partying didn't change, hadn't changed. So I got sicker. It was crazy. But now I see that that was also symptom imperative.
Yeah.
That
Our paths. Oh, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah. No, just because I've heard Dr. Sarno and other mind body doctors describe like drinking and different things like that as TMS. They're like, oh, TMS. And I love thinking about that because it makes so much sense to me.
Our paths are strikingly similar, and I'm listening to you unpack it, nodding my head. The alcohol, the hardcore life, right, and then the straightening it out was exactly what I did, and channeled that into the fitness and the nutrition, all the way into full-blown disordered eating and over exercising and all the things, right? I noticed there was a moment for me. I would wake up in the morning and I would check to see how I felt fatigue wise. And I would check and it would still be there. And I would check and it would be there. And it reminded me of the days I would wake up. And I don't know if you ever had this getting into your healthy lifestyle, right? But I body checked a lot. How is my stomach? How do my pants fit? I was checking a lot, right? Which was classic piece of disordered eating and body image disorder. So that sort of just followed me into chronic fatigue. Those habits that I had built to check in and make sure I was healthy and keeping it all lined up just followed me. And yeah, I would wake up and I would notice I'm zooming in, right? And I'm hyper vigilant about how my body feels. And I just remember that day, it was like, holy smokes, I've been checking my body for decades. And realizing how much distress that has caused me to check in and criticize and check in and criticize, to check in and make wrong, to check in and want to fix, right? And it's like, oh, I mean, I get almost a little sweaty thinking about it because of the distress that has caused each of us along the way. But wow, I'm just nodding my head, I guess, like, yes, very similar unfolding, I guess, of our paths, and even brought that into grad school. Like I needed to get a 4.0 and I was going to learn behavior change in the counseling field and I was going to get it all right. And then to watch your health deteriorate before your very eyes, you're like, I'm doing all the right things. I kept saying to my first therapist, I don't get it. I'm doing all the right things. And she was like, I don't know what A+ you're trying to get, but like, and that was my first kind of exposure to somebody calling out that perfectionism of, oh yeah, I guess I'm trying to get an A+ in my well-being. Oh crap, who knew? But wow, it's so real though. I mean, the suffering, you almost don't notice it happening, right? Like you had said, the first person you work with calling that out a little bit, it is surprising. And when you really reflect back with honesty through your life, you can see that thread there. And it's a little bit like we're just tugging on that one thread, to be quite honest, right? And it's everything else was wrapped around that one thread. It's how it felt for me. But
I love
loving your
that. Yeah.
share.
Yeah, you too. I can relate to all of that. I love the thread. That is so, so, so true. And it's just wrapped around everything. I did the same thing. I never went to school when I was younger. So when I went hardcore, I also did that whole school thing. I had to get an A. I had to study law, even though that wasn't my, it was just like cracking the whip over my back. But yeah, you just don't know. I didn't know any other way. It was normal to me. Obviously I like learned it somewhere. It was like it was normalized in my culture, maybe my family culture, wherever. On some level it was normal. That what did you say? It was like, oh yeah, search, criticize, search, criticize, search, make wrong, search, make wrong. And it's like just little tweaks. This is what I say to people in consultations when they're thinking about working. I'm like, it's literally every time we meet, it's just like little tweaks, just these tweaks to these bad habits over time. And I one of my clients, and she got on the call one day and she started talking, and I said, oh my God, like what happened? You're not being mean to yourself anymore. And she said, oh, I forget what you said to me, but I know I got told off. I just told her off one day. Just stop, I can't hear it. I
Yeah.
hear you
It hurts. It
beating
hurts.
yourself
Yeah.
up. It used to be normal to me, probably,
Oh,
to hear people speak like this and to me, but when you
yes.
stop doing these bad habits, you can see and feel when other people do it, and it hurts.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, and I think, there's this expectation. I have a few female clients that are really deep in that work right now. And even when they notice themselves harsh on themselves, then they're harsh on themselves for being harsh. So, I mean, I chuckle, but it really can stack up quickly. And then I'll kind of laugh with them like, oh, interesting that you're judging your judgment, or interesting that you're criticizing your inner critic. Like, wait a minute, do we see what's happening here? And they can usually find a laugh in that, right? Because it's sort of ironic that it all just stacks up. But I say that to share, like, it really can so quickly. And I think that's why, self-forgiveness is a big part of this journey, to really, when you know better, I really don't like the phrase, when you know better, you do better, right? Because not always. We really have to learn quite a lot of times how to do something differently or better. And we should really forgive ourselves that it takes, what, 10,000 hours to become an expert, right? Well, it's going to take those hours, and it's going to take those repetitions, and it's going to take that relearning. And the only way we relearn is through experience. And sometimes we think we just need the intellectual knowledge to do better. And I just don't believe that's so. We have to sure be exposed to a knowledge or a different understanding, but then the act of implementing it through a caring way and receiving our new experience, really experiencing something different, right? We know just catapults that neuroplasticity. And when we do reflect back, we have to see that we have hindsight. I used to reflect back in the beginning and be angry at my past self. Well, she didn't know any better. And you and I have said that so many times here. We didn't know differently. We didn't know any better. And so if we can see that through compassion, and we reflect back, and we have some forgiveness for those old parts, those old ways of being, there's just so much in there that we can do to nurture ourselves, both for our past, our present, and our future. There was a coach that, and I will totally forget his name right now, but he told me, there's no such thing as an unrealistic goal. Like, you can get to this, but you got to give yourself so much more time. Like, you really have to let this be a 5-year journey, right? And when you're in it, you're like, no, I need this gone tomorrow. What are you talking about? But when you do get to that place where you see it as a journey, and you see it as the rest of your life, you're going to truly do this work and be there for yourself. It really does shift things. It takes that desperation off your back. And when you have this long timeline ahead of you, it's spacious, and you can breathe, and you don't have to fix yourself overnight. Again, that fixer comes in so quick, and that's what makes us think we have a short timeline to fix this. But it's such an illusion. And when we can get into acceptance of, yeah, just doing the best I can each day to make those little tweaks, right? And I have my life to move through all of this. It's like, take a breath and take that pressure off. Mm,
Definitely. I love that so much, the spaciousness that it brings. And when you can
yeah.
see, like you said, with the thread, like it's always like a few years ago, if I had wrote a book about my life and my past, like it would have been so sad and so depressing.
Mm,
But now it really is, like you said, with the thread, it really is like, wow, I was always
yeah.
on this path. I was always, getting
Oh,
closer. I was always, meant to do this work. This is part of my soul's journey. My soul came here to.
yes.
It's such a different story. It's really a celebratory one, a really
Mm.
powerful one, that just for myself, and
Well, you should write that book,
yeah,
Eva.
I will.
It
um,
reminds me of The Alchemist. Have you read The Alchemist? Like, it's sort of that whole, it unfolded for the right thing, the right way.
yeah,
I mean, imagine, somebody in their first month of what you were going through, reading what you wrote as your whole journey, and knowing that their journey, their future vision can truly be different than their current now. Like how much hope and inspiration that would bring to somebody.
Yeah, it's just like, and because I just think we're the people that our
Yeah.
cells didn't have.
Yes.
Like that's what I
Yes.
always think and say to myself, that yeah, just yeah, that lonely, isolated, desperate place. It's definitely no fun for
Mm.
anyone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I suppose, our clients, we never really want them to need us for life, right? We want them to build their inner guide and be able to write their own story, looking backward and finding that thread and really seeing it, clearly. It really has evolved the way it needs to. Because man, it feels all wrong when you're back in those moments.
it feels all wrong. And yeah, it was like Dr. Schubner said when I was talking to him that he said like, oh, you read you when you got this information, it made
Yeah.
it, your life made sense. And that really was my experience. Like you described reading the books, it was just like, oh my God, this just makes so much sense. And it made everything, this journey, yeah, it just makes everything that felt so wrong and felt so desperate and felt so
Yeah.
missing out. It's just completely turned that around. So
Yeah. Now, I don't know how you feel on like maybe more on this end of the journey, right? Versus back there. But I always imagine that when I would be able to run someday, because I used to be a runner before all this, when I would be able to run, I would just be overwhelmed with tears and I would just be so grateful. And like gratitude was there and emotion was there, but it was a very grounded, centered, this is wonderful that I can run, but if I can't run next week, I'm going to be okay with it. And in the beginning, it was like, oh, I can do this. Okay. And it would be such a roller coaster, a lot of peaks and valleys. Where now, if I can take a run, like, yes, I'm grateful, but I'm also grateful for many other things, right? And I know I am more than just my ability to run. I am just my vision of myself, my definition of myself is just so much more expansive that I don't need to run to feel whole anymore. Where prior I did. I had to be fit in all the things to feel okay. And so now I'm always sometimes surprised that I don't have like a flood of gratitude or a flood of something like excitement. I feel it and it's much more centered and grounded. And I think maybe authentic is the word. Like it's authentic. I don't know. What do you experience anything like
I
that?
love this so much. I never thought
Okay.
about that before, but it's so true because I even get surprised when people still ask, like, but so you don't have pain? I'm like, wow, it's so much better than that. It's like I like I see my past not as pain and suffering anymore. It's like the old, like really intense dualistic, like this is bad, this is good. I don't want the bad. I just want the good. Like that it becomes less, so much more softening and just so much less of that good bad experience, and just this so much more authentic, like relating and authentic groundedness, just every day, moment to moment. And that's what brings me tears, really, just like just that, the gift of that. I'm like, I keep saying to my friend who's staying with me at the moment, I'm like, I just give me more of this. Like I don't care, like if I don't mind what happens. I have so many great goals that I really would love to achieve, but it's just whatever gets me more of this, I'm in.
I'm in on that. I love that. Oh, that's a beautiful experience, Aoife. I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
mm.
Cool. Well,
And how oh, go ahead.
yeah. Well, I was just gonna say it's been so nice connecting with you and hanging out with you. And it's really funny actually how similar our experiences have been.
Yes.
Actually, when you were sharing about the morning checking as well, that's why the morning routine part I find so is like just the
Uh-huh.
most essential. Morning and nighttime routine,
Mhm.
because they're really the times when those old patterns, the old neural
Yes.
pathways, old habits just want to creep in the morning and the nighttime. So That's really, and it makes sense to me. Then
Yes.
I think about like different like religious practices over the years. It's like morning prayer and meditation. My
Mhm.
granny used to have us say prayers before bed, and now I'm starting to say prayers before bed again. I'm like, "God, this makes so much sense." Like you would like pray and gratitude and
Yes.
pray for the people you love before bed. You're literally working with your subconscious and um your spirit, I suppose, as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I actually haven't thought of it in that capacity with the routine and the ritual behind it. I mean, I'm doing those things, but I guess I'm just seeing it through your lens right now. Yes, it's so grounding, right? And centering, and to back away from what your normal, just habitual reactions would be. It's a deliberate time, right? It's structured, it's deliberate. It gives you something to follow. Oh, yes. I'm loving that so much. Yeah.
Amazing.
If we start anywhere, right, maybe that's the place to start, is getting ourselves with those bookends for
No,
our
it
day,
is. Yeah,
right? Yeah.
it really is.
Mhm.
And because
Mm.
the subconscious is more, it's easier to get in
Oh,
there at those hours. And like you said, you wake up in the morning and
yeah.
straight in with the checking. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, getting those routines in, they're just little, they're lifeboats really.
Oh, I love that, lifeboat, such a great word.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank
Yeah,
you
it's
so
been,
much for the discussion. It went by really fast. I looked and I was like, "Oh, I have another call at 11," and I was like, "Wow, 50 minutes has gone by. What in the world?" Yeah, this was beautiful.
I love it. Okay, well, I'll leave. What I'll do is that, yeah, I'll leave all the information for anyone to get in touch with
Okay.
you if they're interested in chatting with you or working with you or seeing what
Yeah.
offerings you have. And yeah, we can reconnect again at any point. So yeah, is there anything that you want to
Yes.
share before I end the call? Like, if you want to let anyone know.
Yeah, I think right now, I have a really consistent offering through my weekly Fill Your Cup newsletter. And whether they hit my Instagram quick and sign up through the link there, or, sign up online through my email, it's got a practice in it every week. And that's the fun part for me, is making something practical, making these practices easy and accessible. And so this is a short email every Wednesday morning that goes out, a little bit of guidance or a little bit of information, but then a practice. And it's just take it with you. For example, it's the other week I did just look into the mirror, but just look into your eyes with warmth. Like, that's it. If you're putting some makeup on, if you're doing your hair, whatever you're doing, just take 1 minute, 30 seconds even, right? To look in the mirror and look through your eyes with warmth. See what that feels like. And then go on with your day, right? Don't overthink it, don't perfect it. Just do this, give this droplet, right? This multivitamin to yourself and move on. And so the practices each week in that are just meant to be very simple and helpful to fill your cup a little bit at a time.
Uh,
So that I will have a course launching in 2023. I'm super excited about, but that's more information to come because I'm still very much in the building process of that. But other than that, my website's probably the best place to visit, or social. I'm on Facebook and Instagram there, and yeah, love hanging out with people and talking more.
Amazing. That email sounds really useful. I'm sure it's gonna help lots of people. So
Thank
amazing.
you.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure, Aoife.
Yeah, you too.